Good morning. The universe is determined, an unchangeable series of events unraveling themselves in sequences of cause and effect. Things will go as they must. Marcus Aurelius wrote that. The only problem with that is it's not entirely true. It's true for most people, especially in the modern society, because scientists will now tell you, as some dickhead said to me here the other night, that science has proven that we have no free will. We have no free will. And I said, well, if science said it, it has to be fucking true. It has to be fucking true. If science said it, it's fucking true. But it's not true. It's just in science's interest that we believe this, so they can, as I think I've said this before, they can then sell us any shit they want, because once it has a science label on it, they have full authority to indoctrinate us in any way they choose. But no different than the Christians, no different than the fucking Christians. But it's not true, because if you actually study the subject, the universe is comprised of binary opposites and paradoxes. We live in a paradoxical universe. So in other words, there's no definite truth. This is the big problem with fucking maths. There is no definite truth. You can't. Well, I could give you one absolute truth. But let's not. Basically, do you know what I'm saying? You can't say, oh, this is. So basically, if you look at it, determinism and free will is a binary opposite. One is order and chaos, which is another binary opposite, order and chaos. If there's enough free will, we have chaos. But both coexist simultaneously in the universe. This is nature. So it's not the reason, the only way we can have free will, and why most people don't have free will, is because as Hume said, most people's actions are determined by their feelings, which is true, because some people can't control their sexual urges, some people can't control their feelings of guilt and shame and how to respond to this. So basically what you have is your nature and your nurture, and really what determines your actions is your nature, and your conceptual experiences then determine your conditioned response. So you have your nature and conditioned responses because of your conceptual experiences, according to what way we are conditioned or programmed by society, and depending then on your nature. Now, I happen to be one of those, as God said to me, I'm hard work. In other words, I'm of a certain nature that's very hard to be conditioned by society. This is what makes me insane. I'll do what I fucking well like, and I'll say what I fucking well like. That's what makes me insane. Anyway, so most people's actions, even though we can have free will, it's not a mathematic fucking thing. We have free will, and me coming on telling you have choice. Something I always argued in all the philosophy groups is you have no choice unless you're fucking aware you have choice. How can you have choice if someone puts out one fucking marshmallow and tells you to choose, and you say, yeah, thanks very much, I'll fucking choose to eat that marshmallow, and then they leave down another one and say, oh, you had a choice. Well, I didn't have a fucking choice if I didn't know I had a choice. Do you know what I'm saying? In order to have a choice, you have to know you have a choice. So you have to become aware that you have choice. And then when you become aware that you have choice, and well, when you become like me, when you reach a certain level of freedom and the universe blocks every step that you take. I remember saying, like, one time, I'm like a mouse in a maze. You keep blocking every fucking door. But I still have choice. I always have choice. And I stay trying to mitigate these things until eventually, like, that was at the stage where it was there. You don't control me. And it kept moving against me until we decided to work together and I live in accordance with the universe. But as I say, in order to have choice, you must first realize you've got choice. But if you don't develop your faculty of reason, you might resent this term, but you're a lower animal. And you only become a higher animal when you develop your faculty of reason. And this means you think for yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you could always think for yourself, because you had to develop the faculty of reason. And up to the point of when you develop the faculty of reason, don't bother getting any feelings of guilt and shame in relation to anything you've done, because all they were is experiences. I don't even consider them mistakes. I consider them experiences, and valuable experiences, and experiences that the universe went completely out of its way to ensure that I had. And then you think about these experiences and you say to yourself, well, I'll make choices based on these experiences. But sometimes these experiences are very necessary throughout history, but the problem is people do no introspection. They do all projection, and this is why they don't ever get to develop the faculty of reason, because of projection. You cunts, you know what I mean? You're the problem. As I used to say when I had the anger issues, I remember saying to the psychologist, she said to me to come off the steroids, and I said, no, I won't come off the steroids. I said, it's not the steroids is the problem. It's not me is the problem. They are the problem. They're the problem. They're the ones who's causing this. But until such time as I realised I have a choice, and that to take control of myself and for my own emotional well-being, we were going to resolve nothing. I was going to resolve nothing. So, basically, if we continue to, and in the same vein, individually and collectively, if we continue to create personas and pretend that we're something we're not going to be able to resolve any issues or work on our character whatsoever. And this will continue to have implications regarding our emotional well-being. And I mean collectively, yeah. So, I'll move on with this, because there's things I want to say. Freud had a large clientele of women, and he used to come to them and describe, because they were suffering from depression and everything else, from repressed secrets, like from encounters of a sexual nature that they used to repress. And they used to repress them because they couldn't really voice them in a patriarchal society. Because, you can see what the church did. The church enslaved them in fucking washhouses and fucking and convents if they dared open their mouth. And don't forget the hold that Christianity had over society. And it's not fucking long gone, let me tell you. It's not, in some cases, it's not gone anywhere at all. It's still very prevalent in a lot of societies. But, so in a patriarchal society, basically, women dared not open their mouth. But they did open their mouth to Freud. They went along for therapy, and he sat them down, got them relaxed, and he called them liars. And he even documented in his books that they were liars. And this is a patriarchal society, and this is the result of that. He called them fucking liars. So he was no fucking different. And then that was 1920, and things never changed. And then we had the Christianity took over, and then we had the psychiatry and the psychologists, and then they became victims. And the whole thing was forgive. But there can be no fucking forgiveness without understanding. And I keep reiterating this, there can be no forgiveness without understanding. All there can be is a delusion of forgiveness, which is very superficial. A couple of lines of coke, it doesn't belong rising to the top, that your delusion does belong falling away. Or a couple of drinks or anything else, because it's just a delusion, that surface persona that you put on, trying to say to yourself, oh yeah, forgiving everybody, I'm good now. And the mental institutions were fucking great at this. Forgiveness, my ass. There can be no forgiveness without understanding. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Now, I remember talking to a girl on the same related issue, and when I was sitting alone, the universe said to me, she may forgive herself. I was saying, what's this shit with forgiveness? And the universe said, she may forgive herself. And I said, what do you mean? What the fuck do you mean? You know what I mean? And there was no more reply after this. It was left at that. There was no more, the subject was never brought up again. And then a while after this, I was watching a film called Girl Interrupted. I don't know if you ever saw the film. It's sort of like the female version of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But a marvellous film. Deep film. I love deep philosophical film. I'm a big believer in philosophy and art, but I won't waste my time. But there was the main protagonist in this. It was such an interesting film for me because she was sent to the nut house. She signed herself in of her own volition, but it was largely to get away from the real crazy people. As she said, oh, it might be crazy in here, but it's even crazier out there. And which was her parents and her whole people who were conforming with these societal norms and boxing her into this prison. Like they signed her in under allegations of promiscuity and an attempt to take her life and everything else. So the first thing was where she said the doctor said to her, "Oh, there was no bones in your hand." Now, I won't waste time on this. So the doctor said to her, "You're having delusions, like delusions and this and that." And she said, can you tell me about them?" And she said, "You want me to sit here and talk to a doctor and tell a doctor that the laws of physics can be suspended?" And she says, "And expect that he's going to believe me." And I sat there and I said to myself, that's the fucking truth. To sit there and try and explain to a doctor who is bound by the confines of his own dogmatic indoctrination that the laws of physics can be suspended and expect him to believe it. And this is the man who's defining who is normal and who is abnormal, what is appropriate behaviour and what is not appropriate behaviour. A man who is bound by the confines of his dogmatic indoctrination. But anyway, I knew exactly what she was talking about because I could relate. And it went on then in the film, went on in the film and all the rest. But there was a girl in the film whose father used to bring her money and used to bring her rotisserie chickens and used to bring her presents. And then the father got her out of that house and he brought her and put her up in her apartment and put her up in an apartment and gave her money and flashed out the apartment with everything she needed: a kitten and a fucking fancy pad and luxury pad and all, and gave her money and everything else. So the two of the girls, the main protagonist and Lisa, which was another main protagonist in the film, broke out from the nut house. They broke out from another house and needed somewhere to stay. So they went to stay with this girl whose father used to give her all this shit. And Lisa, who was played by Angelina Jolie, said to the girl as she was going up the stairs, she then going upstairs to bed, she said, "We know your father's fucking you. We know your father's fucking you, and everybody knows your father's fucking you. But the thing that nobody knows is that you enjoy it. That you enjoy it," she says to her. And the girl then went upstairs and hung herself. And she hung herself out of guilt and shame. And the father was giving her all this shit out of guilt and shame, giving her all these presents, all this money, putting her up in the apartment, out of guilt and shame over the fact that he could not control his sexual urges and his desires, and that he satisfied his desires of his own selfish interest. But we're not going to blame the man because he had not developed any faculty of reason, was not in control of himself because he had not. The man was still at the animal level. He had not evolved past this level, as most people have not. Most people have not. They just try to pretend they're fucking civilized by pointing fingers at everybody else and doing no introspection at a collective level or an individual level. Just pointing fingers. We're civilized. But you're not civilized. We're not civilized. It's a big fucking collective persona. We're civilized. It's bullshit. It's bullshit, and that's what's making everybody fucking miserable. A big collective persona about we are civilized. But you're not civilized, you're animals. We're all animals. We're mammals, in fact. So she went upstairs and she hung herself, yeah. And that's what the universe meant. Now, this is not a generalization. I don't do generalizations. I'm talking about the fucking film. You can watch it if you want or don't watch it. But that's what the universe meant. The first person she has to forgive is herself. But psychology don't recognise this or don't want to acknowledge this. They don't want to acknowledge this because that's not civilized. That's not civilized, That's not proper conduct. Everybody has to do their own introspection. Everybody has to. The first part of start thinking for yourself. Start thinking for yourself. Existing as a thing in itself. Taking control of the reins. And it's not a flick of a light switch by someone coming on telling you to take responsibility for your life and take responsibility for your life and behave in this way and make your fucking bed. No, it's a constant progress. You have to slowly start taking the reins, and you can't be given the reins until you're able to drive the fucking chariot. And that's why the universe kept slamming doors down, because the only place I was going to do with the chariot is drive it off a cliff. And learning how to drive the chariot and how to take the reins it's a lot of fucking work. It's a lot of goddamn fucking work. You have to learn how to drive the chariot. You have to learn how to drive the chariot. You have to sit down every day and think about how you responded to certain incidents and how you could have responded better. And I still do this. I had an incident up there in the room the other night where I had to just stand back from it and say to myself, I can't even choose the best response for this. I have to sit back. I have to choose no response until such time as I actually think how to respond to this. And then if I do respond, I have to think about my response. I'll make it off this. Bye.